When most of us picture the stock market, we see this cold, complicated machine, right? All numbers and algorithms. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the market is actually more like a living, breathing ecosystem, one that's driven by the very raw, very predictable emotions of the crowd? Well, that's the world as seen by master swing trader Alan Farley, and that's the philosophy we're going to unpack today.
Okay, so let's start with this quote from Farley. It's a bit jarring, right? But it's meant to be. This isn't about being mean or malicious. It's about being brutally honest about the game of short-term trading. It's a zero-sum world. For you to win, someone else has to lose. And to succeed, you have to accept that you're in a competition, a sort of predator-prey environment.
And that idea leads us right into the central metaphor for this entire explainer. Farley wants you to imagine the market as a vast, chaotic wilderness. And the huge, emotional crowd of traders, they're the herd, stampeding one way with greed, then scattering in fear. The successful trader? Well, they're not part of the herd. They're the hunter, disciplined, separate, just watching and waiting for the right moment.
So, if you're the hunter, how do you track your prey? You look for signs, for tracks. For a swing trader, the price chart is those tracks in the dirt. It's not just a bunch of lines. It's a living map that shows you the struggle, the greed, and the fear of the herd. It tells you exactly where they've been, and, more importantly, it gives you some really good clues about where they're about to go. Now, a crucial skill for reading these tracks is something Farley calls 3D charting. Think about it for a second. A real hunter doesn't just stare at the ground right in front of their feet. No way. They're constantly scanning the immediate path, the nearby trees, and the distant horizon. 3D charting is that exact same concept for trading. You're looking at the market through multiple time frames, short, medium, and long, to get a full, kind of holographic picture of the landscape.
And here's how that plays out in the real world. A super short-term day trader, their 3D view might be a 1-minute, a 5-minute, and a 60-minute chart. But a longer-term investor, they're zooming way out, looking at daily, weekly, and monthly charts. See, each hunter picks their maps based on the kind of hunt they're on. The big takeaway is that you always need that broader context from different time frames to really get what's happening on your main chart.
Of course, every hunter needs their tools. But in Farley's world, you gotta be careful. Technical indicators are not some magic crystal ball that's going to predict the future. They're more like a compass or a good pair of binoculars. They are tools you use to confirm what your eyes, your most important instrument, are already seeing in the landscape of the price chart.
And you'll recognize a lot of these old friends, right? Bollinger Bands, volume, MACD, trend lines, the whole gang's here. But honestly, the specific tool you use isn't nearly as important as how you use it. Their job is always secondary. They're just there to back up your primary analysis of the price patterns, to give you that little extra bit of confidence before you pull the trigger.
And this right here, this is the golden rule. It is absolutely crucial. Farley is adamant that technical analysis is, first and foremost, a visual art. You start by looking at the price action itself. If you see a pattern, if you see the tracks of the herd forming, then you glance down at your indicators to see if they agree. You never, ever let an indicator be the boss and tell you what to do on its own.
You know, a successful hunt is all about timing. A predator knows the rhythms of the wilderness. When the herd goes to the watering hole, when it sleeps, when it's most vulnerable. Well, the market is no different. It has its own predictable rhythms, daily, weekly, even seasonal. And a smart trader learns those rhythms and uses them to their advantage.
Let's just look at a typical day. That first hour is pure chaos, right? It's a mad rush as all the overnight news gets sorted out. Then you get the midday lull, things get quiet, and that's often when the pros do their work. And then, bam, the final hour frenzy, where everyone is scrambling to set up their positions before the bell. Each of these phases has its own unique personality, and each offers totally different opportunities for the patient hunter.
Now, if we zoom out from that daily clock, we start to see the same kind of patterns on the annual calendar. The market has seasons, too. I mean, think about the January effect, when all that new 401k money comes flooding in. Or what about the famous Santa Claus rally at the end of the year? These aren't just myths. They're driven by predictable cycles of cash flow and mass psychology.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This isn't just a feeling. The historical data backs it up pretty clearly. On average, going back decades, December has been the strongest month for gains. And September, well, it's been the weakest, often a negative month. For the hunter, knowing what season it is, that's a huge strategic edge.
So we've talked about reading the charts, using the right tools, understanding the timing of the market. But for Farley, the single most important part of a successful hunt has nothing to do with any of that external stuff. The real battle, the ultimate advantage, comes from mastering the wilderness inside, your own mind.
And the difference is just, it's night and day. On one side, you have the herd. They are completely reactive, driven by those primal emotions. Greed when things are going up, panic when they're going down. But the master trader, the hunter, they operate on a totally different frequency. They're guided by a plan, by discipline, and, maybe most importantly, by patience. They don't react to the herd's emotions, they act on a strategy.
And this really is the core thesis of Farley's entire philosophy. Making money in the market doesn't come from some secret indicator or a magic formula. It comes from exploiting the predictable emotional behavior of the crowd. But, and this is the big but, you can only do that after you have achieved total control over your own emotions.
So, we'll end with this thought. Learning to read a chart, understanding market rhythms, that's a skill. Anyone can develop that with enough practice. But the real challenge, the final boss, isn't out there in the wilderness of the market. It's inside your own head. The market's patterns are there for everyone to see. The real question you have to ask yourself is, can you master your own?